hard to become black Americans in this society, and we were slaves here. And we did a lot of free work.
The fact that when you
anti-slavery,
let's talk about the fact.
I mean, slavery in America was.
Do you realize that only less than 2% of white Americans owned slaves?
But it was a system of white supremacy.
You realize that slavery is thousands of years old?
White people were
Do you know
the slave
who
owners.
was the first race to try to end slavery? Well, what's controversial?
I'm very surprised that you're trying to.
And it makes sense to me that someone like Jillian Michaels would say something like this. She is from a reality TV show. She's known for the show The Biggest Loser. It was a show where they would bring on people who were overweight, struggling with image and everything, and they would help them lose weight by making them do something.
Jillian, I'm surprised that you're trying to litigate who was the beneficiary of slavery and who was not.
What I'm trying to tell you is that
in the context of American history, in the context of American history, what are you saying is incorrect by saying that it was white people oppressing black people?
Every single thing is
what happens when one of the boldest voices in comedy decides he's had enough of sugarcoating the truth. That's exactly what went down when Katt Williams set his sights on Jillian Michaels. And trust me, this wasn't just some casual comeback or a comedian cracking a few jokes. What Katt unleashed was a dismantling of her entire argument, layered with history, sharp receipts, and raw truths that Hollywood usually tiptoes around. If you've been anywhere online lately, you've probably seen Jillian spark outrage after her CNN comments, where she practically waved off slavery like it was just a minor bump in America's past.
They don't even talk about slavery in America, you know why? Because they don't want to give no credit to the people that got black people out of slavery in the first place. They don't want them to get no shine. So they erased it from history. But I'll say it right here in front of the world. Black women got black people out of slavery in America. That's the facts. As a group, black women did that.
According to her logic, since only 2% of white Americans owned slaves, black people need to just stop bringing it up and move on. Shocking, right? But here's where things get interesting. Katt didn't just call her out. He reframed the entire conversation, shining a light on why America keeps trying to bury its history, who benefits when it's erased, and what. That silence costs the future. Once you hear his breakdown, you'll understand why this moment turned into a cultural flashpoint. The spark behind this firestorm came from Jillian Michaels. Yes, the fitness trainer known for barking orders on TV. Out of nowhere, she decided she had the credentials to lecture the nation on slavery.
What are you saying is incorrect by saying that it was white people oppressing black people?
Every single thing is like, oh, no, this is all because white people bad. And it's totally partisan.
First of all, we don't have time to litigate all of this.
Of course we don't, because then you're going to lose the argument. And everything is racialized, just like you're trying to do to me now.
On live television, she claimed less than 2% of white Americans were ever enslavers, which in her mind meant the rest shouldn't be held accountable. She went further, painting black people as stuck in the past, insisting they should move on. Now, this kind of talking point isn't new. It's tidy, simple, and completely misleading. For one, the number itself is shaky. More importantly, historians have long made it clear that even if not every white person owned enslaved people, the system itself touched nearly every aspect of American life. And this didn't happen in isolation either. Jillian's remarks came right as Donald Trump was doubling down on high. Push to strip museums of slavery exhibits, saying they make the U.S. look bad. That's the real backdrop here.
They fought wars, they led revolts, they built America. But in the U.S. Constitution, they were counted as 3/5 of a person. Not a full human, not even close. This wasn't a glitch, it was the law. In 1787, during the writing of the Constitution, the U.S. made a deal. To give southern states more power, every 5 enslaved black people would count as 3/5. That's how slave states got more seats in Congress, while keeping millions in chains.
A coordinated attempt to whitewash history, softening the brutal parts so they don't disrupt the narrative of American exceptionalism. Jillian's comments weren't just careless. They echoed a political script designed to downplay systemic racism. And if she thought she could slip that narrative through without pushback, she clearly forgot about Katt Williams. Katt Williams has built his reputation on saying the things others are too scared to say. He's sharp, unfiltered, and fearless. So the moment he caught wind of Jillian's remarks, he unleashed the kind of response only he can deliver. With his trademark mix of wit and razor-sharp commentary, he tore apart the absurdity of telling Black people to get over slavery, especially when the wealth created from it still circulates today. He nailed it with one piercing line. "You pay them reparations, racism is dead." It sounded like a joke, but the weight behind it was undeniable.
White friend, don't you want to get slavery behind you? You ain't never had a slave in your mother life. Get this past you. You pay them reparations, racism is dead. Get it past you, white friends.
What he was really saying was, if America wants closure, it needs to stop pretending slavery is ancient history and start addressing the debt created by centuries of stolen labor, stolen land, and stolen wealth. That's Katt in a nutshell. He doesn't bend his truth to keep corporations happy or soften his edges for mainstream approval. While others backtrack with apology tours, Katt doubles down. Because for him, this wasn't just about Jillian's CNN slip. It was about the larger hypocrisy in how America handles its own history. His message was clear. If you're tired of being called racist, the solution isn't erasing the victim's pain. The solution is repairing the damage. And as powerful as that was, Katt didn't stop there.
His whole persona.
So I'm not allowed to then come back the next day and apologize. That's for the Tracy Morgans of the world. I meant what I said, and I said what I meant. Don't come here talking to sons of slaves about that.
He dug even deeper, exposing how America's retelling of slavery is itself a weapon. This is where Katt cut into a nerve many people never even think about. He pointed out that the way history is taught in America has been deliberately designed to erase the agency of enslaved Black people. According to him, the real reason people like Jillian want slavery forgotten is because they don't want to acknowledge that freedom wasn't granted, it was fought for. And if you dive into the history books, he's right. Too often, we're told the story as if white generosity ended slavery, when in reality, it was the relentless resistance, rebellions, escapes, and demands of enslaved people that forced change. Entire underground networks existed. Countless uprisings shook the system, and Black women especially played a leading role in resisting and reshaping their futures.
What are you saying is incorrect by saying that it was white people oppressing Black people?
Every single thing is like, oh, no, this is all because white people bad. And it's totally partisan.
We don't, first of all, we don't have time to litigate all of this.
Of course we don't, because then you're going to lose the argument. And if everything is racialized, just like you're trying to do to me now.
Katt didn't hesitate to spotlight that fact. Black women were a driving force in ending slavery in America. That's not something you'll see front and center in most school textbooks, but historians back it up. By erasing that truth, the narrative gets twisted. Instead of honoring resilience and courage, the story paints freedom as a gift handed down, and that distortion isn't harmless. It feeds directly into the minimization of systemic racism today. Because if slavery was just a small hiccup, the debt owed doesn't look so big. But if slavery was a centuries-long system crushed by Black resistance, suddenly the story and the responsibility changes. That's the control Katt was calling out. Now, put Jillian's comments side by side with what was happening politically. At the very same time, Donald Trump was on his crusade against woke museums. arguing that institutions like the Smithsonian talk too much about slavery and racism, which, according to him, makes America look weak. He even ordered attorneys to pressure museums into removing slavery exhibits, essentially weaponizing government power to rewrite history. Jillian echoed almost the same points on CNN, which is why Katt's response was so sharp. He recognized her words weren't just ignorant, they were feeding into a coordinated movement to sanitize the past. And history shows you, this isn't new. Erasing painful truths has always been a tool for maintaining control. If you are #1 export, and it was all harvested by enslaved Black people, that wealth didn't stay in the South. It bankrolled northern factories, shipping companies, and Wall Street banks. In other words, the entire nation was cashing in. Even poor white families who didn't directly own slaves still benefited. They weren't the ones being whipped, sold, or hunted down. They had access to jobs, land, and voting rights, all privileges denied to Black people by law. And let's not forget, slavery wasn't just tolerated, it was legally protected. From the 3/5 Compromise to the Fugitive Slave Act, the U.S. government enshrined slavery into its very foundation. That means whether or not a white person directly owned slaves, the entire system was designed for them to benefit. So when Jillian waves off slavery by saying only 2%, it's a deflection. The reality is, whiteness as a whole was elevated by that system. And that advantage didn't vanish in 1865. It carried forward for generations. The legacy of that wealth is the part that stings the most. When slavery ended, former enslavers kept their land, their money, and their influence. Banks that profited off human bondage stayed in business. Insurance companies that covered enslaved people kept collecting. That money passed down through families, growing over time. Meanwhile, newly freed Black families started with nothing, and often less than nothing. They weren't given reparations. And whenever they tried to build independent wealth, they were met with violence. Take Tulsa's Black Wall Street. In the early 1900s, it was a thriving hub of Black prosperity, with banks, businesses, and successful entrepreneurs. But in 1921, a white mob, with help from authorities, burned it to the ground and even dropped explosives from planes. Hundreds were killed, thousands displaced, and millions in Black wealth vanished overnight. And that wasn't the only time. From Wilmington to Rosewood to smaller towns across the planet. Every attempt at Black progress was crushed with violence. So when Jillian says, "Stop blaming white people," she's ignoring the reality that the very roads, schools, and corporations that make up America were built on stolen labor and protected by laws that excluded Black families. That wealth didn't just shape the past, it still fuels generational inequality today. That's why Katt's demand for reparations wasn't symbolic. It was about acknowledging the economic wound that never healed. Katt also peeled back another layer most people don't see. He argued that dismissing slavery isn't just ignorance, it's a strategy of distraction. If you convince people that slavery wasn't that bad or that it's irrelevant now, then you prevent communities from uniting around the truth. And without unity, there's no collective power. Katt even pointed to how systems of oppression often target Black leaders early, disrupting their lives before they can rise to prominence. It might sound extreme, but history proves the point. From the surveillance of civil rights leaders to the targeting of activists today, the pattern is clear. The bigger goal is always control. And the most powerful way to control people is by controlling their history. That's why Katt didn't just clown Jillian for being misinformed. He exposed how her comments fed into a much broader project of erasure, distraction, and division. And once you see that, it's impossible to brush her words off as harmless. But here's the twist that made people furious. Jillian Michaels, the same woman who said slavery wasn't a big deal, is raising a Black daughter adopted from Haiti. Let that sink in. she downplayed the very history that shapes her own child's identity. And if that wasn't disturbing enough, she's also been caught claiming the real issue in America isn't white supremacy, it's Black degeneracy. Imagine being a young Black girl and hearing your mother, a public figure, frame your community as the problem rather than acknowledging centuries of systemic oppression. Social media lit up with people questioning how safe it is for that child to grow up in a home where her heritage is dismissed and her community is vilified. Some even questioned Jillian's motives for adopting a Black child, wondering if it was more about optics than genuine love. And honestly, this isn't new. We've seen celebrities adopt children of color while still holding on to troubling beliefs about race. The contradiction is glaring. Using a Black child as proof of being not racist while pushing arguments straight out of a whitewashing handbook. That isn't just hypocrisy, it's dangerous. And it's why Jillian isn't just being dragged for bad history. She's facing backlash for what looks like a deeper conflict between her public image and her private beliefs. So let's bring this all together. Jillian Michaels minimized slavery with a misleading statistic, and Katt Williams wasn't about to let it slide. He broke down her argument, point by point, exposing not only the flaws in her history, but also the larger agenda behind it, an agenda designed to erase, deflect, and silence. Along the way, he reminded everyone that slavery wasn't a footnote. It was the foundation of America's wealth, and its impact still shapes society today. He reminded us that freedom wasn't gifted, it was seized through resistance. And he made it clear that the fight over history is really a fight over the future. So why does slavery still make so many people defensive? Maybe because deep down, America knows the truth. The wealth still circulates, the trauma still lingers, and the debt is still unpaid. The real problem isn't that we talk about slavery too much. The problem is that we haven't talked about it enough. And maybe Katt Williams isn't just telling jokes. Maybe he's ripping back the curtain on truths this country keeps trying to bury. The only question now is, are people finally ready to listen?